Imagine fighting for years for the greatest empire the world has ever known, facing bloody battles and achieving glories, only to be discarded when you were no longer useful. This was the fate of thousands of Roman soldiers who gave everything for Rome, only to be betrayed and abandoned. In this video, I will reveal the forgotten and shocking truths about the fate of these men, showing how the empire left them to their own devices and what this can teach us about loyalty, sacrifice, and recognition. Watch until the end to uncover what no one tells about the tragic end of these warriors and how these lessons still resonate in our lives today. Imagine yourself in the midst of a Roman battlefield. The ground trembles with the weight of marching legions, shields gleam under the sun, and the sound of swords and spears clashing dominates the air. It's a scene of glory and chaos, where every soldier fights to protect the mighty empire. But the reality of this struggle is not just victory. Many of these men are wounded, some gravely. And then comes the question, what happened to a legionary who could no longer fight? The story of these soldiers is an emotional and often overlooked chapter of ancient Rome. These men, who shed their blood and sweat for the empire, were not simply abandoned when they could no longer serve. In fact, the Romans developed a system of care that, for its time, was remarkably advanced and demonstrated how much they valued the men who defended their borders. When a soldier was wounded, aid began immediately. Now imagine this. While the battle still raged around them, military doctors rushed through the field, defying death to reach the injured. They carried small bags filled with bandages and basic medicines, ready to stop the bleeding and stabilize soldiers before it was too late. It was quick, dangerous, and vital work. But this was just the beginning. These doctors did not work alone. Near the battlefield, makeshift hospitals awaited the wounded. These places, known as field hospitals, were milestones in medical care at the time. There, soldiers received more detailed treatment, from managing infections to performing rudimentary surgeries. And the results? Surprisingly effective. Studies show that over 70% of wounded soldiers managed to recover and often return to the battlefield. Have you ever tried to uncover what made Rome the greatest empire in the world, only to feel lost in a flood of details? Don't worry, you're not alone. Imagine finally mastering the most decisive moments in Roman history, learning the brilliant strategies of generals like Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus, and understanding how their tactics shaped the world's destiny. With this in mind, I created the digital book, The 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire, where you'll get access to a clear, objective analysis filled with exclusive insights. Discover how Rome won battles considered impossible and become a true expert in Roman military history. Don't waste time. Click the pinned comment and secure your copy now. Act fast before copies run out. But what about those for whom returning wasn't an option? What happened to the men who bore the permanent marks of war? Here, the story takes an exciting turn. Instead of discarding them, Rome devised ways to care for its veterans. Some practices were simple, like land redistribution, while others were more elaborate, involving pensions and new roles within society. These men were not forgotten. They were recognized as a fundamental part of the machine that kept the empire running. Still, the life of a disabled soldier was not easy. And you might be wondering, how exactly did they survive? Was there enough help? Stay with us as we explore how Rome found creative ways to support these heroes, even in an era of constant challenges. Their story is just beginning, and it's more inspiring than you can imagine. Before we continue, I noticed you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Don't miss out on all the amazing content about Rome that we're always bringing to you. Roman legionaries dedicated 25 years of their lives to military service, enduring extreme physical and emotional challenges. These soldiers were trained to withstand exhausting marches, brutal combat, and harsh conditions. However, the success of the Roman legions depended not only on their discipline and courage, but also on an innovative medical system that helped save lives and keep the troops in action. The Roman army was a pioneer in organizing medical units within the legions. Each unit had doctors, medici, and a dedicated support team to care for the wounded as quickly as possible. During battles, these doctors were strategically positioned near the action. Armed with first aid kits, they swiftly identified injured soldiers, applied bandages to stop bleeding, and stabilized the most critical cases. This initial care was crucial to prevent unnecessary deaths in the heat of battle. After rescue, the wounded were transported to field hospitals, strategically set up near combat zones. These temporary facilities, though simple, were surprisingly well organized for their time. Each hospital could accommodate between 250 and 500 soldiers, providing a space for more detailed treatments. Doctors performed procedures like sutures, amputations, and the application of ointments made from medicinal herbs to combat infections. Metal instruments were used for surgeries, and rudimentary cleaning techniques helped improve the effectiveness of treatments. The results were impressive. Research indicates that around 70% of soldiers treated in field hospitals survived their injuries, a remarkably high rate considering the medical limitations of the time. This success not only preserved lives, but also reduced the need to permanently remove legionaries from service, saving the Roman state resources that would otherwise be allocated to pensions or benefits. Beyond keeping the troops functional, this medical system reflected Roman pragmatism. Recovered soldiers quickly returned to the fight, avoiding the loss of experienced men and reducing pressure on recruitment. However, for those who suffered irreversible injuries and could not return to combat, the empire offered specific solutions, demonstrating a limited yet meaningful recognition of these men's sacrifices. The journey of soldiers who could no longer fight opens another fascinating chapter in Roman history, where the care and compensation offered by the state reveal how Rome dealt with its wounded veterans. Let me know in the comments if you thought the treatment Roman soldiers received was cruel. I want to hear your opinion. Imagine being a Roman soldier, enduring years of intense battles, protecting the borders of Rome's growing power. You fought bravely, but a severe injury took you off the battlefield forever. Now, unable to return to the legions, the question arises, what did the Roman Republic do for you? Money? Pensions? No. During the Republican period, such ideas were far from reality. Instead, recognition for your sacrifice came in another form: land. For the Romans, land was much more than a resource. It was a symbol of stability, belonging, and a future. For disabled soldiers, it represented a chance to start over. When a legionary found himself unable to continue serving, it was common for him to receive a plot of land as a reward for his service. But these lands were not distributed randomly. Most often, the plots were located near the region of origin of the legion to which the soldier belonged. This meant that after years of war, he had the chance to return to his roots. Imagine a soldier from Hispania who fought bravely in Gaul. After suffering a permanent injury, he returned to the place where he grew up, now the owner of a piece of land, and began a new life. These land grants were not just a reward, they were a way to reintegrate veterans into society while simultaneously expanding and consolidating Roman control in conquered areas. However, not everything was so simple. The quality of the land varied greatly. Some received fertile fields that could be easily cultivated, while others had to contend with arid and inhospitable regions where survival was a constant challenge. For soldiers with no experience as farmers, working the land could be just as exhausting as the battlefield. Many, upon realizing the difficulty, sold their plots to wealthier citizens and sought refuge in the cities. This practice of granting land had roots in laws such as those of Lucius Flavius and Tiberius Gracchus, aimed at redistributing public land to those who had contributed most to Rome's advancement. But it also had a strategic side. Keeping soldiers near borders and in newly conquered territories was an effective way to consolidate Roman control over these areas. Despite its limitations, this was the Republic's way of caring for its wounded heroes. However, as Rome grew and the demands on its army increased, it became clear that something more structured was needed. The fate of disabled soldiers was about to change dramatically, as new ideas and systems began to emerge at the dawn of the empire. This transformation would forever mark Rome's relationship with its veterans. I noticed you forgot to like the video. Help us continue bringing content about Roman history by liking the video. Your support makes our work possible. At the beginning of the Roman Empire, Augustus initiated a significant transformation in how Rome cared for its soldiers by creating the Aerarium Militare, an unprecedented military pension fund. This system was developed to provide financial support to legionaries who retired after years of service and to those who, due to severe injuries, could no longer fight. Before Augustus, soldiers received at most land as a reward, a practice that, while useful, was limited and often unequal. Augustus recognized that the army needed a more organized and sustainable solution to ensure the stability and loyalty of the troops, especially as the empire grew and demanded greater control over its armed forces. To fund the program, Augustus made a strategic decision. He initially invested a significant amount of his own personal resources, demonstrating his commitment to the soldiers. However, he understood that a sustainable system could not rely solely on private funds. Thus, two specific taxes were established to finance the aerarium militare, a 5% inheritance tax and a 1% tax on auction sales. Additionally, the fund received regular contributions from allies and cities within Roman territory, reinforcing the system's reach. The fund's operation was carefully structured. Regular legionaries who completed 25 years of service received a one-time payment sufficient to start a new life outside the army. This amount varied depending on the soldier's rank. For instance, a centurion holding a position of greater responsibility could receive significantly higher payments than a common legionary. For disabled soldiers, the amount was proportional to their time of service before becoming unfit, ensuring that even those who could not complete their service term were compensated for their sacrifice. This system not only provided financial security for veterans, but also had a strategic impact. It created a sense of stability within the legions, encouraged new enlistments, and reinforced loyalty to the empire. Additionally, the fund helped reduce social tensions, as soldiers no longer had to face poverty or rely on others after their military service. The creation of the aerarium militare was one of Augustus's most important reforms, marking the beginning of a new era in the care of Roman veterans. By ensuring that soldiers received tangible recognition for their years of sacrifice, Augustus not only solidified the strength of his legions, but also demonstrated how much the empire valued those who fought for its expansion and security. This military pension model became a cornerstone of Roman administration and an example of how pragmatism and innovation could transform a society. This was only the beginning of a long process of developing state support for veterans, with implications that would extend for centuries. Don't forget to grab your digital book, 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. It's essential to get it now before the copies run out. Imagine the end of a long journey. A Roman soldier, his armor marked by battles and his body weary, looks back at the years of sacrifice, courage, and loyalty he dedicated to the empire. He faced fierce enemies, endured the hardship of endless marches, and bore the weight of Rome's expectations. Now the time for his reward has come. For legionaries who managed to complete the exhausting 25 years of service, the empire offered a one-time payment known as premia militare. This payment was more than just a sum of money. It represented a future, a chance to start anew. Many used this resource to purchase fertile lands, start businesses, or build a life with their families. Others chose to live with dignity, enjoying their remaining years with the respect their experience afforded them. The amount paid varied according to the soldier's rank. Common legionaries received a sum sufficient to ensure a stable life, while centurions, who led troops and faced the greatest risks in battle, received considerably higher amounts. This reflected the empire's recognition of the crucial role these leaders played in the military hierarchy. However, not all soldiers were able to complete their term of service. Many were forced to leave the ranks due to severe injuries or health problems. For these men, the empire had a proportional financial compensation system. The amount was calculated based on the time they had served before becoming invalid. This approach aimed at fairness, acknowledging the sacrifices of these soldiers even when they couldn't complete the full 25 years. But it wasn't simple. To ensure the compensation was fair, an injured soldier had to go through a rigorous evaluation process. This step was conducted by a medical committee composed of 3 experienced military professionals. These doctors carefully examined injuries and health conditions, assessing whether the soldier could still perform some type of service or if their disability was permanent. What's remarkable is that the Romans considered both physical injuries and mental health issues. Soldiers showing signs of psychological trauma or behaviors incompatible with military service were also acknowledged by the committee. This aspect demonstrates a surprising level of sensitivity for the time, showing that the empire understood the complexities of war's impact on its men. If approved by the committee, the injured soldier received financial compensation. While the amount was smaller than that given to those who completed 25 years, it still represented a source of stability. In many cases, disabled soldiers also received small plots of land, usually smaller than those given to full-term veterans, but still valuable. These lands could be cultivated, sold, or rented out, depending on the soldier's circumstances. Moreover, There were cases where disabled soldiers were employed in administrative or auxiliary roles within the army, depending on their skills and degree of disability. For example, those who could read and write might handle bureaucratic tasks, while others could serve as advisors or aides in less physically demanding positions. This system, though not perfect, was a testament to Roman pragmatism. It not only provided financial support to veterans, but also helped them reintegrate into society, either through land grants or administrative roles. It was a way to ensure that those who gave everything for the empire were not left marginalized, without recognition or means of sustenance. But the story of Roman soldiers does not end here. How did these men transition to civilian life? What challenges did they face after leaving the army? And how did Rome manage those who, though injured, could still contribute in unexpected ways? Roman soldiers who became disabled during military service were granted a range of carefully planned rights to help them rebuild their lives and maintain some form of livelihood. Among the main benefits offered were small land grants, the right to create a valid military will, and the ability to allocate the wealth they had accumulated during their careers. These rights not only provided practical support, but also underscored the empire's recognition of these men's sacrifices. Land grants were the first form of assistance provided to disabled soldiers. Although smaller than the allocations given to veterans who completed 25 years of service, these plots were strategically located, often in newly conquered territories. This arrangement not only helped soldiers establish themselves, but also aided the empire in consolidating control over these areas. The land served multiple purposes. For soldiers capable of working, these properties could be cultivated to produce food and sustain their households. However, those who lacked the physical ability or agricultural knowledge often sold their plots. This provided them with immediate financial resources that could be used to start a business, support their families, or in some cases, invest in urban assets such as housing or trade. Still, the quality and location of the land varied greatly. While some received fertile and accessible fields, others had to contend with more arid or remote regions, making the use of these properties more challenging. Even so, the land grant offered disabled soldiers an opportunity to restart their lives outside the military, a privilege many other Roman citizens never had. Another essential right granted to disabled soldiers was the ability to create a military will. Roman civilian law made it quite difficult for most citizens to draft wills, requiring numerous formalities and validations. However, soldiers enjoyed a special privilege. They could draft their wills simply and practically, even during campaigns. This military will remain valid for up to a year after the end of service or discharge due to disability. This allowed soldiers to decide the fate of their possessions quickly and without complications, ensuring that their assets were left to family members or trusted individuals. This right was particularly important for those who accumulated considerable wealth during their service, such as war spoils, back pay, or gifts received. Additionally, the will provided soldiers with peace of mind, knowing that their families would be supported even after their death. It was a way to ensure that the effort and sacrifice invested in military service translated into benefits for their loved ones. The right to delegate assets acquired during a military career was another key pillar of disabled soldiers' rights. Known as peculium castrensi, this privilege allowed soldiers to designate who would inherit the wealth accumulated throughout their service, including salaries, war spoils, weapons, and even gifts earned during campaigns. This right went beyond the mere transfer of assets. It emphasized the autonomy and importance of the soldier in Roman society. Even after leaving the army, the soldier was still regarded as someone of great significance, with the power to decide the fate of their possessions. Assets could be transferred to children, close relatives, or even slaves who had earned the soldier's trust, a common practice at the time. This tradition helped strengthen family and social ties, enabling the soldier to contribute to the well-being of their heirs. Additionally, the possibility of naming slaves or allies as beneficiaries showcased the complexity of the personal relationships soldiers formed throughout their lives. These rights, land grants, wills, and asset delegation were not just practical benefits. They also symbolized recognition for the sacrifices made by the soldiers. Rome deeply valued the men who dedicated their lives to the military, and these provisions ensured that, even after leaving the ranks, they remained integrated into the social and economic fabric of the empire. However, The transition to civilian life was not always smooth. Many disabled soldiers faced challenges in managing their land or assets, and additional support from family or the local community was often crucial for their success. Despite these difficulties, the rights offered by the empire underscored Rome's commitment to not abandoning those who had given so much for its growth and stability. This approach not only provided a certain level of dignity to disabled soldiers, but also reinforced loyalty to the Roman system. The stories of these men demonstrate how the empire managed to balance pragmatism with human appreciation during an era of constant challenges. So what do you think about the lives of former Roman soldiers? Let me know in the comments if you think a life like this was fair. Imagine a Roman soldier, marked by time and battles, who can no longer wield his sword or carry his shield. Though his body is weakened by injuries, his mind remains sharp, filled with experiences and strategies learned over years of service. For these men, the Roman Empire offered a rare opportunity: roles in administrative functions. These positions did not involve combat, but were equally important. The Roman army, famous for its invincibility, did not rely solely on brute force. Efficient logistics were critical to planning campaigns, organizing supplies, and ensuring the legions were always ready to fight. It was in these roles that disabled soldiers with some education could find a new purpose. These roles ranged from inventory management, tracking the number of weapons, armor, and rations available, to overseeing correspondence between the legions and central authorities in Rome. They could also be responsible for organizing payrolls, supervising the transportation of supplies, or even assisting commanders with strategic tasks. For the empire, these veterans were the perfect blend of practical military knowledge and administrative support. However, the reality was not so simple. Few soldiers had the necessary qualifications for these roles. Most legionaries came from humble backgrounds, where formal education was an unattainable luxury. Military training, focused on discipline and physical strength, rarely included literacy or mathematical skills. Only a small fraction, usually those who had learned to read and write before enlisting or during their service, were eligible for these positions. For the few who secured these positions, the recognition was significant. They became figures of respect, with the opportunity to continue contributing to the empire in ways that accommodated their physical limitations. Many worked near barracks or in administrative offices in cities far from the front lines. It was a dignified new beginning, a way to remain relevant and valued. But what about those without these skills? The majority of disabled soldiers, unable to take on such roles, faced even greater challenges. Without access to administrative positions, they had to rely on other benefits, such as small land grants or financial compensation. Many returned to their families or sought manual labor, where their military experience was not always acknowledged. This reality also highlighted a flaw in the system. Soldiers were trained for war but rarely for life after it. Even so, Rome's effort to provide alternatives, however limited, reflected an acknowledgement of these men's sacrifices. This raises a broader question. How did the empire address the needs of its veterans more comprehensively? What other paths were available to these men after leaving the legions? Despite its limitations, the Roman state displayed remarkable foresight in providing basic support for disabled soldiers, establishing one of the earliest forms of social welfare recorded in history. While resources were limited and not all received substantial benefits, the measures implemented aimed to ensure a minimum level of security for those no longer able to serve. Small land grants given to disabled soldiers were one way to ensure they had the means to start a new life. While not always fertile or located in strategic regions, these lands were an important resource for subsistence. For many, they became the foundation for growing food, generating income, or even selling the property to invest in other opportunities. Additionally, the right to a military will allow disabled soldiers to organize the distribution of assets accumulated during their service, an uncommon privilege at the time. This simplified the inheritance process and ensured that their families or trusted individuals could rely on the resources they left behind. The delegation of assets further supported this, allowing salaries, war spoils, or other earnings to be transferred directly to children, relatives, or even allies. Another measure, albeit limited to a few, was the opportunity to take on administrative roles. Disabled soldiers with literacy skills could assume support roles in military or administrative offices, contributing their experience and knowledge even after becoming physically unable to serve. This option was restricted, as most soldiers lacked formal education, but for those who qualified, it provided a dignified and respectable alternative. While these measures were not universal or widely accessible, they demonstrated the Empire's concern for its veterans. Recognizing that military service deserved compensation, even in cases of disability, represented significant progress at a time when state support for individuals was rare. Though imperfect, the Roman system laid the groundwork for what we now understand as social welfare. It showed that pragmatism could be combined with human acknowledgement, ensuring that those who sacrificed everything for the empire received some form of support. This pioneering approach remains a lasting example of how organization and valuing individuals can profoundly impact a society. So, now that you know the incredible story of Roman ex-soldiers, it's clear how their lives were full of challenges, even after giving everything for the empire. Whether through small land grants, pensions, or even the chance to work in administrative roles, Rome tried in its own way to recognize the sacrifices of these men. Despite all the limitations, it's impressive that 2,000 years ago, there was already a concern for taking care of those who had fought to protect the empire. And remember, whenever you want to learn how Rome became such a powerful civilization, just check the pinned comment and grab your digital book, 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. Copies are limited, so get yours today. And what about you? Did you know the Romans put so much thought into their soldiers' futures? If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video. It helps us a lot to keep bringing you more content like this. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss anything. There's a lot of amazing content about ancient Rome coming your way. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.